Hi everyone. I want to thank you for the great support you showed us in terms of the last video on tattoos. Many of you found it helpful apparently. You shared it lots, you commented on it, you asked questions, which is great. I was very pleased to answer as many as I could. Following out of that is a question that I often get asked, and it comes from people typically who grew up in the church, and they say, how come nothing is a sin anymore? It seems like fellows like me are constantly saying this is no longer sin, that's no longer sin. So what's happening with that? Well, it would be helpful first maybe to define what sin is. And positively, looking at it from a positive sense, sin is when we miss what God has set up as His best for our lives. I like to think of it in terms of God has given me instructions of things that are best for me, things that are harmful. And what sin really is when I miss His very best for my life. And so I don't want to sin because I want what is best for me, both in positive and negative senses, in terms of what I should do and what I shouldn't do. So why is, sometimes we feel like nothing is a sin anymore? Well, the simplest answer to that, and some of you have heard me say this maybe, is that some of these things never really were sin to begin with. Why is that? Well, if you think about, for example, the topic we did last week, we had some things that we held up as sin that were really just a misunderstanding of the three types of Old Testament law. And again, there's civil law, ceremonial law, and moral law. The first two guide Israel in how she can be distinct from her neighbors and how she properly worships before God. The third one, the moral law, the parts of the Old Testament that are moral law, are carried over into the New Testament, and we follow those today. So we got tripped up in some things like women and men's clothing, which we said was a sin. Tattoos we said were a sin. But then we freely ate crab and lobster and pork, even though those types of things are also prohibited. So we were a little bit uncertain, and therefore we had set some things up as sin that really were not. The second thing we've done is we really built fences around the law. And what they would do is if the sin was here, they would build a great fence around it so you couldn't get close. And that motive is admirable. I'm not all about seeing how close we can walk to the line, but I am about using the Bible properly and understanding it properly. So for example, we did some of the same things, and maybe the best example of this is we often heard that playing cards were a sin. Well, why was that? Well, we believe gambling was a sin, and I believe it as well because it betrays a lack of trust in God for my provision. The Bible tells me I should trust God to provide for my needs, even as I'm a faithful giver. So I don't believe in gambling. But then poker was used to gamble. And playing cards, the kind with the suite, the king, the queen, the jack, the poker, these were used to play poker, and so they were wrong because poker was wrong, because gambling was wrong, and then some of us even backed up further and wouldn't play flinch or skiboo because they had playing cards that looked like poker cards that was used to play poker and gambling, so you get the idea. So we built fences. And so we did some of that, and in reality, yes, gambling is wrong, but playing cards themselves, it depends entirely on what game you want to play with them. Because we built the fence. This is the point. Now, other things I would say we have let go and we should not have. Some of you maybe celebrated the video on tattoos because you heard me say, hey, it's a free-for-all now, and now you can do all of these things that you weren't allowed to do one time. Not quite so fast. There are a number of things that God still either commands us as Christians to do or says it's really better if you don't do. For example, sexual immorality is still wrong. God designed sex for marriage, and sex outside of marriage misses His mark. It is not the best for us, and that is still, always has been wrong, still is wrong. Greed is wrong. Greed is a sin. The Bible clearly says, Colossians 3:5 tells us that greed is idolatry, which is actually worshiping things other than the Creator. That's an example of something is wrong. Here's a great one. Envy is a sin. Being jealous over somebody else's things is a sin still, because it's not good for us. And nothing creates envy like social media. Even in the platform you're watching this on, it can make us be envious, cause us to envy. And I'll leave you with this one. Gossip has always been, is now, and will always be a sin. Tearing down people, causing other people to think worse of somebody else, is wrong. So, it's not that there is no sin anymore. There are some things that, yes, the Bible still teaches. But let me leave you with this. They're not just in the negative in terms of the don't do. Think about the things that God tells us are best for us. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted. Forgive one another as God in Christ forgave you. Jesus said plainly, if you don't forgive each other, my Father in heaven won't forgive you. So thanks again. Hope this was helpful. If you have a question, don't forget to email it to us. The address is there on your screen. Share away and ask whatever questions you have.